Joining me now to discuss the changes is Henry Chang. He is a lawyer with the firm Blaney McMurtry, and he specializes in border issues. Mr. Chang, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, let me just read you the new, because you have gone over this, I'm going to read you, and for our viewers, the new directive and how it's worded. What the U.S. Customs and Border Service is saying is, quote, a Canadian citizen working in or facilitating the proliferation of the legal marijuana industry in Canada coming to the U.S. for reasons unrelated to the marijuana industry will generally be admissible to the U.S., comma. However, if a traveler is found to be coming to the U.S. for a reason related to the marijuana industry, they may be deemed inadmissible. So, I guess the question is, as a specialist watching all of this, what do you make of it?
Well, I think this is definitely good news, but the media is reporting that this is great news, and I think it's not necessarily great news. It does clarify that if I'm a cannabis employee and I'm going down for tourism, going to Vegas for the weekend, maybe to Disneyland with my family, I should be fine. But it doesn't resolve other uncertainties in terms of, what can I do as a representative of this marijuana company in Canada? Could I enter as a business visitor, even though I'm not engaged in any clear, trafficking conduct while I'm in the United States? Can I go for a business meeting? Can I go to a marijuana conference? And these issues are still unresolved.
Okay, if you were, for example, working in an industry and you were going down to maybe buy some parts for a plant or a greenhouse or something like that.
That potentially could result in a trafficking bar, which is pretty serious. I like to say that you're up there with Pablo Escobar if you're barred under this ground of inadmissibility. So it's a very serious thing if it happens. And the only thing we know for sure is that going down for Disneyland with your family is fine. That does not address the ongoing issue of whether or not I can go down as a representative of my company in simple activities such as attending a conference. So that's still up in the air at this point.
Okay. Are there any other unanswered questions in general with regards to the American border and people who either work in the pot industry or those who will now legally partake of pot?
Well, I think I guess your readership definitely wants to know what will happen to the average Canadian, and this has nothing to do with the announcement that came out this morning or with perhaps a couple of days ago. The media is reporting it this morning, but my understanding is it happened a day or two ago.
Okay.
In terms of the average Canadian, there's still a lot of issues and a lot of problems legalization doesn't solve. So I'll give you an example. If I have a conviction prior to legalization in Canada for possession, that's still going to bar me. If I smoke marijuana after October 17th, it still can result in a bar, but not under the controlled substance ground. They have alternate grounds, and the statement did mention it briefly. There is a separate ground for being a drug abuser or addict. There's also a separate ground that wasn't mentioned for being a person who's barred for mental defect. And they consider alcoholism with associated harmful behavior to be a mental defect. So if, for example, I'm involved with a DUI while I'm high on marijuana in Canada after legalization, that could be grounds for inadmissibility based on having a mental defect. Those are two separate grounds that will continue to exist even after legalization. The only point I want to make is those two do require a medical opinion, but you will be turned away until you participate in a medical opinion, which may or may not find you barred under those grounds ultimately when the medical assessment comes back.
Okay, I guess one of the other questions too, and this is one that's been often asked, and it was even asked of our Minister of Public Safety, Ralph Goodale, and that is the other one, is what if you are asked by a border agent at the U.S. border, have you smoked marijuana? So the common question, and then the question would be, how do I answer that? And politicians have had to dance around it, not telling people to lie, but people saying you're not obliged to answer everything. What's your advice to people when they're asked, if they were to be asked a question like that?
Well, as a lawyer, I also have to be careful what I say, but I can tell you that there's no, it's a lose-lose situation for anybody that's asked this question, because if you lie about it and they find out, you're barred for misrepresentation. And if you tell the truth, you're probably going to be barred for a controlled substance violation. So it's a very difficult situation where you really don't have an easy solution. The solution that most of us attorneys are telling our clients is refuse to answer the question. Try to tell them it's irrelevant. You don't feel it's important to your inspection, and you're refusing to answer it. You should be aware there are going to be implications. You will probably be turned away, and every time you go back, the issue will come up. If you're at a land border, you could be detained for a very long period of time before they ultimately send you back to Canada. At the very least, it gives you an opportunity to consult with legal counsel before you go back and make any admissions. But it's not a complete solution to the problem. It's just a temporary bandage to the solution, because we really don't have an answer.
So what you're saying then is, with regards to the specific category of people working in Canada's soon-to-be burgeoning marijuana industry, with regards to those people, as long as they're not going to the States on business, they now have some good news.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those individuals are fine. Now, the notice doesn't talk about investors, but logically, investors of cannabis companies should be fine as well under the same law, I guess the same argument. And it does mention Canadian citizens. It doesn't mention permanent residents of Canada or foreign workers that are on work permits here. But again, logically, it should extend to them as well. The only concern I have is that CBP's prior interpretation until a couple of days ago was far from logical. So I think we need to wait and see what happens with those cases as well.
Okay, well, I want to thank you very much. We may be checking in with you over the weeks and months to come, and I can probably also guess that you will never be without employment, Mr. Chang. Thanks very much for speaking with us.
I think that's a safe guess. Thank you.